Hi and welcome to Sparkle Chart.
Hello gorgeous people, I'm back today with a project for Lulu Art in a make you smile style. What's that? Well, I promise, this journal page will make you smile. So, what are the necessary ingredients for a make you smile style page? You have to start with some gorgeous art supplies. And today I'm going to be using paints from Dina Wakley and Jane Davenport and some gorgeous 7 Dots Studio as my background paper. So the first thing to do is cut the paper to a little bit smaller than the size of your journal page so that you can glue it in when finished. Now don't do that now because you're going to make a really big mess. Now I have a wonderful stamp from Holtz and some Squid ink from Jane Davenport, and I'm just going to randomly stamp this gorgeous handwritten text stamp across the background, and it just adds an additional element, makes it a bit more unique rather than just 7 Dots Studio paper. Gorgeous as it is, I like to make it a bit more mine. Now I've chosen to use the Squid ink because I know that this will be waterproof when dry, and with what I'm about to do to this poor piece of paper, it needs waterproof ink. Now the next thing, I'm going to use this striped stencil from Holtz, it's called Shifter Stripe, and some distress ink just to make the background paper kind of bold. Now I'm using the little distress foam tool here to apply the ink, and I'm making sure that I'm not doing it so that it's all exactly the same. So I'm making some spots lightly inked, some more darkly inked, and then just flipping the stencil around so that I can do the whole page. Just make sure you line those stripes up really well. And it'll just mean that the colour is a little bit more varied and a bit more interesting. So it's not just sort of this one flat looking thing. I like stuff that's a bit varied. If you try and make it look too perfect, I fail dismally. I'm not sure about you. Now once you've got those stripes on the page, it's time to start having a little bit of fun because our background is ready to go. So I've got a little paint scraper and some of those gorgeous Dina Wakley and Jane Davenport acrylic paints, and I'm just going to add the tiniest little bit of paint to the end of the scraper and scrape this across my page. And depending on the paint you're using, some of it can be quite liquidy, and as you're about to see with the magenta, can make some interesting bold marks. So just add a tiny bit at a time and go really slow just to add some color to the background without adding any more stripes, because you don't really want more stripes. You just want a little bit of color. As you can see, that pink was a bit wet, and it sort of makes it stand out more. So just sort of have a play maybe on a piece of scrap paper before working straight onto your background, just to see how it's going to work. Add a little purple, a little dark blue, just so it looks amazing. Now I have to apologize for the next part. You're about to hear a whole lot of rain noise because this was filmed during the flooding in Townsville, and I'm sorry, there was not a day without rain for me to record, so my apologies for the rain noise you're about to hear. Alright, so for this next step, I'm just going to add a little bit of the magenta and the dark blue paint into a palette, and then with a flat brush, I'm just going to load up the brush with that pink paint and touch the tip of it over here to the blue. Now I want to paint some roses on my canvas, just very stylized roses. So I'm going to start with the base layer. I think I'm just going to paint 3. So all I'm doing at the moment is judging the size. I think I might like that one a little bit bigger, and laying down the base colour. Okay, a bit more pink on the brush here. Again, dip it into the blue, and I'm making the rose so that I start with the pink paint on the outside and the blue in the centre to create a darker middle. And then once I've got that done, the middle, just sort of wave the paintbrush around a little bit really. So now that I've got a bit of a mix, I'm just going to make that rose slightly bigger and then go for a third. Now you can still see the stripes behind this, so what I'm going to do is just mix up a bit more of this pink paint and add another layer. Now it doesn't matter if it covers over some of the purple. Basically I just want to cover up some of the stripes and make this a little bit more opaque so that the stripes don't interfere with anything going on the top. Now that this is almost dry, I'm going to need a little bit more paint. I'm going to use lime for the leaves. I'm just going to apply it with the same brush. Now as you can see, I'm leaving the brush strokes in the piece. I think it just looks a little bit more interesting that way. It doesn't take much to add them, just sort of 2 squiggles of the paintbrush really. Okay, I kind of like that, gives me some space here. Now the other thing you could do is also add some around the edges if you wanted to sort of have a few more leaves, but I'm pretty happy with that. Now if you'd like them a bit darker, just kind of go over the original painted areas with a bit more of the lime. And if you would like an even darker leaf, like a completely darker leaf, add a bit of that dark blue paint. Just a hint. I might do that now and just show you what I mean. So I've got a little bit here, probably a bit too much. Just mix it in. And then you can just go in and add sort of like a little swish. And if you'd really like to get a little bit more variety, just add a bit more green back in. And that'll give you a mid-tone. And suddenly that very simple leaf has a little bit more life to it. And you can keep doing that as many times as you like to get the right colours. Oops, I always manage to get my finger in the paint somehow. It's a talent, not a very useful one. Let that dry. Alright, up until now I have been working with a dry brush that is just wet with the acrylic paint. That's about to change. So, whilst I'm using the same flat brush, it's now a bit damp. And I'll also be working with a water brush. So I'm going to darken up some of the edges here, just to make the roses stand out a bit more and to give the background a different look. So what I'm going to do is edge everything with this beautiful dark blue paint from Davenport and then blend out the edges with the water brush. Now if the area is particularly small, I'll just go in with the water brush and add a very light glaze of colour. Now because we have several different substrates between the paint and the paper, you'll get several different looks. So some of it will be quite sheer, some of it will be quite dark. It's really interesting. Now you can also use this to your advantage and just add a few swipes of that colour into the leaves. Now if the paint is a little too thick, just add a drip from the water brush into it to thin it slightly, but not too much. It's also best to work in small sections so that you don't end up with any that has dried that you can't move. Add a little colour off the water brush and blend it into the background so it doesn't look quite so out of place. Now you might need to do a couple of layers of that to get the right look. See how you go. Now I'm just picking up some of the paint on my work surface here just to help darken a few areas. Gives me a little bit more control over how much I add in some of these delicate areas. Alright, so I'm just going to work with the water brush at the moment just to finish this off. I've got paint everywhere. Add a few slightly darker areas. But I'd like to keep this area sort of a bit more free from colour. Add a little bit more dark contrast wherever you think it needs it. Okay, so I'm just going to add some of this blue around the edges, just so it doesn't look out of place. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is squeeze my water brush so that it's nice and watery, and add some splats over that distress ink. And that will mean that I don't have perfect stripes anymore. I'll have a little bit of variation. Now I'm just using the dirty blue water from my palette, because if I do get any colour, it also won't look out of place. Alright, grab a clean paper towel and blot that. That's just made that background slightly more scruffy. Okay, time to move on to the finishing touches. So now I've got some white acrylic paint and some more of the magenta from Dina Wakley. I'm just going to load up my brush. Now you'll notice I've got pink but not going all the way. It's because I'm going to put white on the other side there, and then I'm just going to muddy the colour slightly. Now that your brush is loaded with both the pink and the white, it's time to add 3 small lines for the center of the flower. They sort of wrap around each other, just like this. And once you've got those started, it makes the rest of the flower much easier and leaving a bit of room in the middle for something else. So I've got 3 little lines here, and then all I'm going to do is go around the outside. So anywhere where there's a join, or a gap I should say, sort of here, I'm going to go from one spot to another and put a petal. There's another gap just here, so another petal, and you can make these as tight or as loose as you like. Another gap here, another petal. Now if you start to run out of paint, just dip it back in, give it a wiggle and keep going. Now if you've got a space where if you've got an area where there's a big space like here, use it to add 2. So you could go here and then here, here and here. Now for the purposes of this, it doesn't really matter if they're perfect or not, just that we've got them on here. Now you'll find that dragging your brush in different directions gives a different look. So if you drag it pink side first, you'll get more white. If you drag it white side first, you'll get more pink. So just vary how you do it and just continue out until you get to the edge of your flower. Now if you'd like to darken any of the areas, you can absolutely do that. Just go back over them. And alternately, if you'd like any of them lighter, you can do that too. So as you can see, this is a very stylized flower, and I'm just going to continue to do the other 2 in the same way. And just adding a few extra strokes to those flowers really makes them bold and gorgeous. We're not quite done just yet. Now, if any of those areas aren't quite pale enough as it starts to dry, just dip the brush in some more of the white paint and just add a little bit of white back in. Don't take away all the colour variation, you're just trying to accent it. At this point I'm swapping to a slightly smaller flat brush, and I'm going to be using some of the Starry colours from Gansai Tambi. And I'm going to activate, I think, probably this beautiful gold here, which is the Starry yellow. So just add a little water. Alright, so while my Gansai Tambi paint is softening, I've got 2 of the Jane Davenport Mermaid markers, and they're 2 of the metallic markers. Now I've given it a gentle shake so that the shimmer is more evenly distributed, and I'm just going to add a few swipes here and there so that my beautiful roses have a little shimmer. Big swipes, little swipes, doesn't matter. The colour will almost fade into the background, but the shimmer will remain. Now the other one I have is this beautiful silvery white. And I'm just going to flick some of this across the background. Now you're not going to see a lot of that as it's dry, as like the pink, it sort of will fade into the background a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just after the shimmer to break things up a little. This has begun to soften. You can leave it for as long as you like, depending on how watery you'd like this. These can go beautiful and syrupy. For me, this should be just fine. And if not, you just leave it a little bit longer for the water to soak into more of the paint. Okay, now I'm going to add a few little splatters to the background here. Again, just to help break things up. And these, of course, will be more prominent on the darker areas. Okay, so now that I've got the background splattered, I'm just going to very carefully add a few swipes of gold to my design. Now these you will see, so add sparingly, and then hold up and look from different angles and just make sure that there's sort of no areas completely devoid of shimmer, like over here, or just here, or here. And holding it up means that you get a sort of a better view of how it will look. And I think a finishing touch just there. And you get that beautiful little extra, something extra. You know I love my something extras. Alright, this is beginning to look bright and bold and gorgeous, and I'm loving it. So when all this dries, you'll have the different coloured speckles from the silver mermaid marker and the gold paint the gold will be stronger because it's more opaque, because I made it that way. You will have the delicate shimmers from the pink Mermaid marker on here with a little bit of shimmer, and then the much stronger bright golds, which is gorgeous. And I just need a word here, I think, and I'm almost finished. Alright, so I've decided to add a sticker to the top corner, and it's just come from this little set here. But when you look at it on the background, you can't really see it. It doesn't stand out enough. So I'm going to recolor it. So I've added it to my craft sheet here. I'm just going to cover it with white paint or gesso, because otherwise the background, the gold background, will show through. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm just going to add a few other touches. So to start with, I have some pens from Davenport, plus a Sharpie marker and just a gold acrylic marker here. Now, it doesn't really require much. All that I'm going to do, just test my pen over on the side first. Make sure I'm not about to ruin anything. Double check it's got good ink flow. And then I'm just going to add a few little dots to the center of each flower and a little bit of gold to the edges. And I just want to use this to help break up some of the pattern from the background. So I'm actually going to draw on the background a little bit so it stands out. Now keep it loose, don't try and be too precise. Okay, so I've just got a rough outline for those petals, and add a bit of this dark pink in as well. Not a lot, just a little bit of green on the edges of the leaves here. Again, just to help define the shape. And I've just got the Jane Davenport white pen here, just to help add some highlights in, as many or as few as you choose. And again, just hold it up to have a look. Make sure there aren't any bits missing something big before putting it back down again. And that just helps sort of give it a bit more whiteness, a few highlights. It stops it from becoming too flat and boring. And lucky last, almost lucky last, apart from the word, I'm just going to use the Sharpie marker to add a few tiny little spots towards the middle as well. And then I'm just going to add a few little touches, very, very light ones. A couple of broken lines to help accentuate the edges. Just move the leaves around. Alright, the white has dried enough so that I think I can add this very carefully. Okay, so that is nice and white against the background here, but that's not the final bit. I'm just going to use the tip of my tweezers to clean up any little fuzzy bits that are on the edge of the lettering. And add the little dot for the eye. Okay, so now that's down there, I'm going to do two things. One, cover it with white Sharpie marker paint. Now I couldn't add the Sharpie marker first because that would not have been able to cover the edges of the sticker as well. Now this is now super bright white yum against that background. Two, cover it with glitter drops, and that should add some real punch. And it's time to add the final shimmering elements. Now I'm seriously considering adding a few white paint drops here, just so that that's not the only white element on the page. So I've got some Higgins drawing ink. While the white paint is drying, time to add the crystal drops. All that's now left to do is leave this to dry and then glue this onto the page in your art journal, and it's going to look amazing. I hope you really loved this Make You Smile style journal page. It's all lots of little techniques that aren't very complicated by themselves, but put them together and you can make a really bold and exciting page. Now I have loved the colour on this, the pop of the green leaves, the pink flowers, and of course, you know, my heart belongs to the sparkly metallics that I've added at the end. But I think that what really makes it pop is the little bits of white that I've added both to the flower and to the background, just to sort of break up those darker, more bold colours a little and give a bit of relief. So I hope you want to try something like this for yourself, and you know, I'll be back with more soon. Bye.